Morning, folks. Good morning. Good morning. Give everyone just a few more minutes to show up today. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the 6th of December Aries Working Group call. We have some useful and good stuff on the agenda today. This is a hyperledger call, so the antitrust policy and the code of conduct are in effect. Links are available in the agenda. Agenda link can be found in the chat. Please make any adjustments that are useful to the community. Links and notes and add yourself to the attendees list if you like. And yeah, is there anyone new today that would like to introduce themselves? Any announcements we should have on the board but don't? Any projects want to share some release updates or progress? Man, tough crowd. Is this thing on? Gosh.
It's been a quiet week.
It has been. At least my mic's working.
Yeah, I was at the bifold meeting yesterday, and they've been doing a fair amount of work in trying to repackage bifold as a series of NPM modules to make it easier for people to integrate. And
Cool.
they're making good progress on that.
Awesome. Thanks for reporting, Warren.
They also have some push notification stuff up and hobbling, I think, by adding a plugin to a mediator for the BC wallet.
Cool.
That was the main stuff I took away from it.
Nice. Steven, anything?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
Awesome.
yeah, I think we had announcements last week. Indie VDR did get some updates this week, so people should, framework creators should do that, and more are coming. Notably, a cache of the pool ledger will be built into Indie VDR, so that's coming.
Nice. Cool. Okay, on our agenda today, could be a marketing update, but I don't see our marketing folks. I know that they have made progress on like the logo and everything else, per feedback and stuff. So, so that's going on, and the next meeting is in January of that particular group. Always welcome, and your feedback is appreciated. We have three kind of main items today. Stephen is going to talk about RPC app attestation protocol. I want to do a quick check-in on the unqualified DIDs, and then community process that we have, and then RFC review. We have a pile. Some of them relate to the unqualified DID stuff, but there's more than that just need to be reviewed, and then if there's no objections merged, if there are objections, then continue on or figure out how to promote that discussion. So that's on the plan today. Any adjustments we want to make to the agenda before we get going? Oh, I will highlight that that AFJ did finally successfully move the repos to Open Wallet. That was done correctly, meaning that any links you had to the old repository will automatically reserve to the new repository, which is awesome. That those links are maintained. And so I haven't found a link yet for their meetings, but that's I'll try and get that and drop it down for anyone that is interested in following along there as a companion project in another org. Cool. Okay, anything before we get going? All right, Stephen, I will throw the floor over to you.
Okay, I apologize. I didn't realize we were going to do it in this format, and so I was actually going to get.
Oh, you want to do something different?
I would have put a slide deck together, but let me go over what this one is, and appreciate the chance to get feedback from folks on this one. So the idea here is a DIDCOM remote procedure call mechanism. Not sure of the name, and open to others. The Aries framework Go folks did HTTP over DIDCOM as a protocol a while ago, and this is very similar to that, and perhaps just what I would consider a generalization of it. To one of the things what we were looking for was a way for the framework to simply pass over the actual activity of the work over to the controller and let the controller run it. With HTTP over DIDCOM, it wasn't clear whether how much the controller would be involved in it and things like that. So this one definitely is intended that the framework just simply not get in the way and provide control. Our initial use case and main use case is this app attestation. We have, BC Gov, not me for sure, has implemented app attestation. App attestation being that a component gets verification that from the mobile OS that the wallet is a specific app, and there's got to be some back and forth between the wallet and a server component to do that operation. The way it's been done currently is basic message is sort of hijacked so that the controller can pass a payload. The two controllers involved can pass payloads back and forth. We didn't go as far as to make an app attestation protocol. And one of the first things Sam said is, why don't we create an app attestation protocol? So that's one piece of feedback that I'd be interested in, is do we want to actually formalize and raise the app attestation up one more level, which is instead of using this remote procedure call mechanism to do it that way. So that's one thing I'm interested in. But the idea here is that we were able to achieve this, or the team was able to achieve this with basic message, but at least with this call, you get a request and a response. So the idea is one party requests the other party do some sort of operation, some procedure call on their behalf, and then pass the results back to them. We also plan again, BC Gov has a video verification service that involves actual humans and a process that involves a series of HTTP requests that the wallet would request pass back to a service, which will take care of invoking an internal service independent of the wallet and do a back and forth, obviously. So that's another of this request response pattern. And so the idea of this protocol is it's a request response pattern. So key concepts is you've got a sender and a responder. The sender initiates and sends out the request. The responder carries out the request however they see fit. Underline that, and the responder may process the request themselves. In other words, the controller may simply do some things and then pass the result back, or they might invoke another service. They might do an HTTP call or some other call to carry out the request, and they too just pass on the results. Likewise, the responder might be unable or unwilling to carry out the request. So a couple of things there. So there is a state transition table, the following states for the sender, the following states for a responder, basically request sent, request receive, and then completed is the happy path, with abandoned, of course, being a possibility via a problem report. So pretty straightforward protocol. It benefits over the simple. We initially thought of the other options we thought of, and again, feedback on this. One was to create just an equivalent to basic message, just the way that we did it in the first place, which is you just send something across and that's it. Obviously, in the majority of things, we want a request response, so that's why we stepped it up to a request response and made it that way. And then it could be, a sequence of calls, but we thought that gets a little complicated for a generic mechanism. So a kind of a loop of request responses, and we thought that might be too complicated. We did borrow from the HTTP over DITCOM. That was another option of simply using HTTP over DITCOM. It's a pretty good protocol. It has an implementation, so we did think about that. We kept a few of the concepts from that, notably the headers, being able to provide that, and then a body in there for the request. So you've got the request, which is the only required field. You have headers, which is required if there is a body attached. The body is optional. We handled the MIME type through a headers name value pair, and then enforced the body would always be base 64 encoded, and that was to allow for a content type, which is ultimately binary, and then always the encoding. We thought about optional and having another parameter here saying whether it's base 64 encoded or not, and it just seemed overly complex versus just saying let's just base 64 encode it and be done with it. So it was just to remove options in doing it that way. Another option here, and Timo suggested it as well, that we considered was having the body as an attachment. and definitely thought of that. Again, just thought the attachment added a fair amount of complexity to it, and if it's not generically implemented, we wouldn't include it. But definitely that's a possibility that we considered. The response message has a status, as would typically come back from, say, an HTTP request, but it can be passed back, can have headers, can have a body as well. Status is the only really, there is no required field, because you could just say, okay, I'm done. We did adopt ACK, so you could just send an ACK back. So if there is nothing to pass back, an equally valid way to handle this is to pass back and adopt an ACK. And it shouldn't have notification here. That's wrong. This should have, I'm looking at this now, I'm seeing an error. This should really be adopted. So it should be DRPC 1.0 ACK. And of course, problem report is adopted, so that when something goes wrong, either I don't understand what this request is, I don't know how to carry it out, you can send back a problem report as the responder. Again, the idea here is that two parties know what the request is. There's no definition of requests, although we could, in theory, create a registry and sort of make it possible for common types of requests to happen. But the idea, for at least for starting, is that the two parties that are participating in this know their requests, so that the sender, for some reason, has a built-in knowledge of a service that can be provided by the responder, and so they ask for it. I think that's more or less it. As I say, a codes catalog could be done, but at this time there are none. There's some drawbacks in here. Prior art, certainly the HTTP over DIDCOM is certainly one we thought about, and use some of it. And this is a bit of a rationale why we wanted something different than HTTP over DIDCOM. The hijacking of the basic message being insufficient. Idea of, should we have a goal code in it? Should we simply use HTTP over DIDCOM? One of the other unresolved that I should have asked is the name remote procedure call appropriate? So that, I've got one more at the end of any questions. I'll open it up to questions or comments, and then I've got one more at the end that's sort of orthogonal to this. So any questions or comments?
Hey, Stephen, it's Tim here. I have a question, not so much specific to this protocol, which looks really cool, more about the primary use case, app attestation.
Yeah.
I mean, there is an emerging, I believe it's IETF, it may be OpenID app attestation API, REST API, that is going to be adopted throughout EU. What are the benefits of doing this versus just implementing that sort of standard REST API? It's simpler.
Who calls the app attestation? Who calls it?
Well, typically the wallet the developer of the wallet is the one that's doing app attestation. So they're the one that's hosting that service. And
Yeah.
each wallet developer has to attest. And anyway, I just wonder, it seems like a lot of complexity for something that may have an IETF standard. So
yeah, I think the idea would be we would implement whatever standard is there. Like what's been implemented now is there's a service doing it, but this is the wallet interactions with that service in order to get an app attestation.
yeah, so the IETF has that REST API for the wallet interactions as well.
Do you have a
Okay.
link for that, Tim?
Yeah.
I'll have to dig it up. It's part of, I have to make sure I've got the right link. I'm saying IETF, but it may be OpenID or somebody else. I'll send it one second.
Well,
And it'd be great if you could add a comment to this issue and we can dig into it.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll put the comment there. I mean, the wallet that's using it right now out of the box is the Italian IIDIS wallet.
Okay, it's,
They've got that in their documentation. I'll drop some links. But
There,
I'm just curious, they must be, I mean, I think there are some privacy benefits to this, but I can't quite think what they would be off the top of my head.
one of them is avoiding the appearance of phoning home.
Yes.
But there are maybe some architectural reasons why this is a better approach. But I'm a big fan of making as much common as possible, even if some architectural adjustments are needed.
yeah.
Meaning, if they've got a data format defined to make it happen, we'll just use the same thing, right?
Okay.
So yeah, big fan of the commonality there.
We do. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I had a question, but I can hold it.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. I feel like this might have been discussed already, but I apologize. I'm not sure I quite understand the motivation for not just doing the app attestation as a protocol, as opposed to a protocol inside of a protocol.
Yeah. That I definitely understand. And we'll think about it on that. Do others think that we should be doing an app attestation protocol? So that really comes back to what Tim's asked as well, which is how do we integrate with what standard there is out there and what others have implemented for app attestation?
There's also a discussion about when tunneling applies and when it doesn't, or when it's a good idea to do tunneling and when it isn't a good idea to do tunneling.
Actually, I'm gonna write that down.
Right. There's a meta discussion there that I think is more interesting to me than the actual details here.
Yeah.
Because there's some really cool uses of tunneling, and this leads. Sorry, Daniel, I'm going to jump on, but you like led into this a little bit for me. I think tunneling plays a really important role in allowing systems that don't talk DIDCOM, but there's a piece of the chain of whatever that is DIDCOM for a good reason. And I think tunneling is really powerful there because you can it allows you to not have to do a huge translation on both sides of the DIDCOM section, right? Mm-hmm. When I think it works less good is when you have when there isn't the whole link is actually DIDCOM to start with. And if the whole thing is DIDCOM to start with, you're talking from one agent that speaks DIDCOM to another agent that speaks DIDCOM, and you're not sort of accommodating some other system and you're trying to avoid like massive translation, then I think a DIDCOM protocol carries a handful of distinct advantages. One of the cool things about protocols is we already have a defined way to discover if the other party supports it, right? And we could extend. There may, for tunneling purposes, we may be able to extend discover features to do just that, right? Where we sort of specify how discover features is actually used to signal what type of things are supported. But if we just use a protocol, it's sort of there by default. It also means that if something like you mentioned and here, if this is a request response, which I believe is different enough from HTTP probably, because of the semantic differences, that is a useful thing to do when you're tunneling something that's request response. If it's something that is likely to blossom into other messages, like you mentioned, you talked about the complexity of something with RPC or chaining requests together or something else. When you hit that too, we start to cross over to the fact that like a native DIDCOM protocol already supports those things really, really well. And so I think that's the idea there, is that there's probably some guidelines about when to tunnel versus when not to tunnel. When I look at app attestation, and I haven't thought long enough about the video, the liveness check example that you mentioned, but from an app attestation perspective, I think there's enough nuance here, and I don't also think we're done with this. I think that it's likely going to require some adjustments over time, and in those, just as like cell phone stuff improves in the importance of app attestation, perhaps legislative requirements for app attestation, which means that it's likely going to need a little bit of jiggling over time. And that, in my mind, pushes it towards a native protocol. The other thing that native protocols give us is versioning. We have in native protocols the ability to version this, and we don't yet. I didn't see yet a way to sort of version the idea of procedure calls that you can remote, if you will, so that you know whether you're calling the 1.0 version or the 1.1 or the 2.0 version of an
Yeah.
RPC. And so that's another thing that we would have to like kind of add on to the tunnel if was necessary. And so anyway, those are some thoughts about to tunnel or to not tunnel that I think we should probably have a discussion around and stick in some write down somewhere so that we can kind of refer to this when this topic comes up again, because this is like the second or third time. And so I think it's likely going to kind of happen in that way. While I've been talking, there's a whole bunch of like JSON RPC and stuff happening in the chat. So I'm going to shut up and I want to hear someone talk about that.
Interesting ideas. Okay, Ariel, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I was I was saying that when I first read about RPC, I was thinking on something more general, I would say, where we receive some, we specify a method and parameters. And I feel that in this case, we are mostly making it to fit into the HTTP use case, right?
Yeah.
So, for instance, I will feel like it would be better if for instance, we could get just a method which could be something like, I don't know, execute URL or request HTTP request as a method, and then we can get as a parameters the headers, the body, and whatever that could be meaningful for that particular use case. So if we do something like that, I think this protocol can work for, well, for almost any kind of remote procedure call of any, and to maybe to bootstrap different protocols from DITCOM.
Okay. I definitely like the idea, and I'll definitely take this back of looking at gRPC and JSON RPC. Really good feedback there, and definitely apply that. Timo's comment was sort of similar, is that why tie it so tightly to HTTP, and if we just use attachment, if it's an HTTP request, the attachment could take care of whatever details are needed for it. And so I'm going to try to combine those. So I'm going to revisit the idea of using an attachment instead of a prescribed body in base 64 and things like that. I think Timo's is similar, but I really appreciate, Ariel and Daniel, your pointers to the two RPC methods and how that triggered it. I admit that it was Plessio that came up with the name of RPC, and I've just run with it, but I love the fact that it triggered looking at these two things more specifically. So I'll definitely follow up and then bring this back to the community. We got a +1 from Jorge on the app attestation protocol, so we'll take a look at that as well.
His +1 got 3 +1s. So
oh, you're right. So that's +4.
Yeah.
Hokey smokes. All right. The last thing I wanted to talk, can I talk this a bit, Sam? Or do you want to defer that?
Yeah. No, I think
so,
that's
this came up a couple of times, both from Timo and from Sam, of, oh, wait, shouldn't this go in didcom.org instead of in Aries RFCs? And so one of the things that got me thinking was that rather than trying to decide where things belong, I'm going to propose that, and this will take action that I'll probably try to facilitate, because doing things makes better than just talking about it. But didcom.org is both a public website for humans to look at and a repository of protocols. And what I'd like to propose is that we change didcom.org just be the presentation of a set of protocols that use didcom, that that work over DIDCOM, and the didcom.org, the repository be rather scripts that pull those together in a way that makes sense for the current state of DIDCOM. Right now, didcom.org has a set of protocols, a bunch of which point to Aries protocols, so are less friendly than they might be. And so what I'm proposing is that we create a didcom-RFCs and put all of the didcom, the ones that are incubating in the diff didcom group, allow for the fact that there's still valid, useful, good didcom protocols here, and have didcom.org be just a website that pulls didcom protocols from wherever they happen to be via automated script, and publishes a static website that contains all of them. So I would like to push on that, rather than having to have this discussion of whether it fits here or there, and whether we talk about it in the DIDCOM user group meeting versus in the Aries working group meeting, and use that as a way to start to come together in them, so we have a path to merging things. Thoughts on that idea?
So the stuff you've brought up is a new take on a discussion that's been had, which
Okay.
So I appreciate the contributions, but it's not the first time it's been discussed. And we also talked about the fact that didcom.org doesn't have a place to say things besides protocol definitions, really. And so that's been another element of the discussion. Here's the problem. I think if we did that, it's not going to fix the problem that drove Timo to suggest that it live at didcom.org. So we can technically do that, but I don't think it's actually going to help. And here's why. There is a lot, and this is all entirely politics, which I realize is like everyone's least favorite topic, but also matters. The politics of why DIDCOM v2 happened not in Aries but over at the diff is related here, in the fact that people had this perception that they weren't allowed to use DIDCOM unless they were part of the Aries community, like wholesale. And there's still this perception that protocols defined, or if they look at a DIDCOM protocol def and they land in an Aries RFC, that it somehow becomes something that they can't or shouldn't use. And so by the idea behind didcom.org at the diff was that it's a place that people could put stuff that has no direct ties, no direct dependency ties on the Aries community at all. And this thing has happened like over and over. There's if we go back a couple years of history, before there was Aries, there was just Indy, and Indy had agents, and then we realized that they would be useful outside of the scope of just Indy, and so Aries was born. At the same time, Ursa became a thing, roughly at the same time. And then within Aries ourselves, we like DIDCOM was a thing that got generalized out of the community, et cetera. And so there's these pressures that exist to not tie things to Aries in a way that it prevents them from being used. So what I mean by saying all of that is that I think if we had that ability to host stuff elsewhere, but also have it wrapped into didcom.org, I think people would still be upset about something that isn't Aries specific, and I don't believe this actually is, either in the general RPC case or the app attestation case, that it still should be hosted somewhere more general than Aries. So we could, I just don't think it's going to help because of the politics involved. But your point is that, like, wait a minute, now we have this different group. We've been doing this here for a long time. Why do we have to like change the universe because people are upset about how the work has been happening? And to be clear, DIDCOM allows for these protocols to be created anywhere, and they don't have to be registered anywhere, nor do they have to use didcom.org as the root URL. In fact, often it's better if it doesn't, if you're producing a protocol that's designed for use within a more specific or narrow community. And so anyway, those are some general thoughts about to didcom.org or not to didcom.org. And now we'll shut up.
So in response to that, what I see for the proposal, and I'm sure others have said it before, so I'm not not at all shocked, but right now we're living in a split universe where some things are created in one, some things are created in the other, and the only thing that I'm trying to contribute is that this would allow visibility and the beginnings of how we merge the two together. The difference between this one and this situation and the other ones you referenced is pretty much the whole community in those other two cases moved together. And what's happened here is that the two communities have not, as far as I know, merged together. And what I'd like to do is create opportunities for that merger to happen. And I don't think we're getting there right now the way it's going. And a question like this is more of a division. And so what I'm trying to do is come up with a way that we can overcome those political and enable combining of those. So that's what I'm pushing for.
I think that's a discussion that is excellent and we should continue to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And again, great conversations, Steve. Thanks for that. It's definitely, if we do go to the app attestation implementation does use that app attest service, and there's documentation and feedback or space you can look at, I would assume, on the Bifold site where this has actually been implemented. And then Colton, will take into account your comments as well. Thank you for those about gRPC and its use. And come back with a revision.
Hey, real quick,
Yes.
Stephen. Does the app attestation service you were describing leverage the underlying hardware?
I am pretty sure it does, but maybe what we do is get a demonstration of the app attestation service that's been implemented. How about that? That'd
be great.
Yeah, there's two things that are in that I think are pretty significant. One is the app attestation, and the other is the implementation of the notification service. So and both of those are no longer sort of being discussed, but actually have been created and active and are being used in the wild.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll suggest that and Sam, maybe we get that on the agenda for an overview.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure which Jamie that is on the call, but he's been involved in the Jamie Hale, if that is. I'm not sure if it is, but
yeah, it's me.
Yeah, Jamie did the notification service implementation. So could be called upon to present on that.
I think talking about that generally would be really good as well, because there's some mediator concerns and some other stuff around there. So that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, you're still sharing, Stephen. I don't know if you knew that.
Boom. Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, you're totally fine. Excellent. Thank you, Stephen, for that discussion. Very good. So Unqualified did check in. We have and I should have this linked, but I don't because it isn't really merged yet. We'll get to that. But the next goal for Unqualified Dids is software support for the related technologies, and we had identified the 17th of December. And I know this has already been underway. This didn't start last week. And so, are there any comments, any thoughts about implementing the changes needed for deprecating unqualified dids?
So update from Aries VCX.
We are well, we have implemented this exchange a while ago, so that will be working with that is, and we'll be working with it peers. Currently, we support it peer 2 and 3, so that's so in that exchange we do support qualified DITs. We are not planning to add that support for the legacy connection protocol, so we'll just roll forward with the DIT exchange and try to get kind of drop off connection. We don't really want to focus on supporting that anymore.
Excellent, and that's fine. If you don't have anything to transition, then there's no need, right?
Yeah.
I don't have a ton to say, an update other than Akapai continues to work on the DitPeer stuff as well.
Awesome. Okay, work is ongoing. Obviously, these are goals, and so like as schedules allow and physics of companies and release dates, etc., and in sprint planning, then there may need to be some adjustment here. But I still think as we're setting a goal to kind of motivate our progress and measure it against that, and that's why I've done so.
Maybe just a question for folks from Akapai and AFJ, if somebody can help answering that. What's the target for the AATH support? Are we targeting DitPeer 4, or is the implementation doing DitPeer 2? What's the status here? Because we do support 2 and 3 right now, and we are looking to add 4. Ideally we would only do only 4. This is the latest. We don't really carry some legacy, but if the plan is to start with DitPeer 2, we can accommodate that in Aries VCX.
I don't necessarily know. I haven't thought as far as Aries Agent Test Harness yet. So I'm the one that's currently pursuing the DitPeer implementation in Akapai right now, and we've been particularly focusing on interop with AFJ right this minute. So I've gone back and I've actually implemented support for DitPeer 1, which I wasn't really intending to do initially, but just the current state of where AFJ is with its DIT exchange implementation, I was seeing if I could get us to a point where we could interoperate sooner than later. But also implemented DitPeer 2 and 3, and also plan to do DitPeer 4. So we're kind of just implementing all the things right now. I think it would be nice to be able to, I expect the DitPeer 2 and 3 implementation to be more of a transitionary thing. Like we implement it now because it's not that crazy to implement it, and then we can abandon it in the future is my hope, in the not too distant future specifically. But I don't know, Stephen, do you have any ideas on the Aries Agent Test Harness side of things?
I don't at this moment. I think we need to, at this second, I don't, because we need a way to trigger the use of it, and I will take it up with our team and see if we can figure out something. But other than writing it down and going, crap, we need this quickly, as soon as Patrick said that, I don't have an answer.
But just a side question, is there like a weekly or bi-weekly calls for AATH?
There are actually, just not enough happening on it, but there are bi-weekly calls, I believe it is, on AATH, yes.
Oh, awesome.
Okay. It's actually a monthly call. It's a monthly. So the last one was, I think, last week or something.
Yeah, I think so. So next week will be the next one. It's on Thursdays.
Just to let you know, guys, that from AFJ side, we are I'm trying to finish the DIT exchange 1.1 support. I mean this with this DIT rotation signature that we have added, and for the moment we are going to support DitPeer 2 and 4. I don't think we are going to support DitPeer 3. I will say that we should focus mostly on DitPeer 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
three is an aberration. I apologize for it.
Yeah, actually, we are simply supporting the DPIR 2 because it was already there for us, so it was easier to implement. But actually, I think we will go into to switch directly from DPIR 1 to 4. So, and now we have to, well, I have to implement the did rotate protocol and hopefully, and of course, integrate the DPIR 4. I'm not sure if I'm going to use the library from Daniel or we are going to just embed it and test it with the test vectors down there, but hopefully we are going to have it for more or less for that date, that target date. But
Awesome.
I think it will be nice to take a look at the test harness and to add some tests, did exchange test using the DPIR 4. I don't know if how easy would it be or not, but I think it will be a good idea to leverage all that stuff to make sure that we are all in the same page. Okay, Daniel, no problem. Actually, I was thinking on maybe contributing to your library, but we'll see.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay. And yeah, and Daniel, thanks for not being offended if we don't all use your code. No, that's awesome. Thank you for writing it. Okay, that's exactly the kind of discussion I hoped happened. So thank you for that. We have 14 minutes, and I think we can make some progress through some of the PRs that have open. This is the adding of the did rotation signature to did exchange. This has been open and without unresolved comment really since for a while now. Is there anyone opposed to merging this? And by opposed, what I'm specifically meaning is that you could like more time to review, or you have a problem with the way that it's done. So that we can move along. So feel free, and no one is going to be bothered if you would like more time to be able to review one of these. But at the same time, we don't want them to hang around because we haven't been pursuing this. And this does fix an issue that brought up the specific problem that we've been having. Having said that, Stephen, are you able to act as merge master for us? Perfect. Okay. Is anyone opposed to merging 795, adding did rotation signature to RFC 23? This will be merged as a proposed protocol. Right. There will be an opportunity to fix it without needing a version change. It is right now, yes. As soon as we get to the point where there are a few implementations and we're satisfied, then we can go ahead and change the version or change the status on this PR. So this is merging it as is. Does that help, Daniel? Okay. Thumbs up from Daniel. Okay. No objection there. While Stephen does that in the background, we're going to 794. This is the did rotate protocol. This also, we've had a lot of really useful discussion on it, but it has sat in its remaining state for a while now. And so this is also up for merging. This adds a new protocol that basically backports did rotation with some variations from didcom v2 to solve some of our issues, including rotating to didcom v2 or rotating to a didcom v2 capable did when that comes along. Is anyone opposed to merging 794, the did rotate protocol? Okay, no opposition for 794. The next one is 793. This one is the unqualified did community coordinated update. This having merged will provide us a better way to link this. It doesn't mean that it can't be updated, of course, with updated dates, etc., or details as necessary, but rather that we have something to actually point to and refer to when we're coordinating our community efforts, link to and tickets, etc. And so, is anyone opposed to merging the community coordinated update RFC 793? This will need some work. Oh, this is the pre-work target transition date. That makes it still accurate. Excellent. Okay. And this will need some updates, of course, just to sort of bring it in line. And those can be smaller updates. This is the creation of the original thing. Any opposition to merging 793?
Let's go for it.
Hearing none. Next is 798. This was opened by Stephen last month. There is a typo. The implementations all used underscore text rather than just the credential help, and so this aligns the RFC, I believe, with reality, meaning what's already been implemented. Is that correct, Stephen?
That is correct. Yes.
Excellent. So this is a pretty minor change and aligns the RFC with implemented reality. Anyone opposed to merging 798? Or, of course, would like more time to evaluate it? I hear none. 799. This is the long-term support policy that in here.
I cannot approve 798 since it's mine, just so you know. So if you could follow up after.
I just approved it.
Oh, okay. You approved it. Okay, got it.
Just now after you told me that you couldn't.
See.
Yeah. Okay. So real-time fixes here. Okay. So the long-term support policy outlines the general guidelines for how projects within Aries actually do this. There was only one main objection to this raised. This was raised by Timo, and I think there was some misunderstanding about the purpose of this. This basically outlines the long-term support policy, generally speaking, and then of course leaves all of the identification, actual version tagging, all of that work to Aries projects specifically, so that they can align and describe those long-term support releases. So this is more about how we think this ought to be done, and having a sort of a generalized policy prevents each project from having to come up with their own. Of course, they can provide any deviations that they deem necessary, but also acts as a guideline for projects doing that. I anticipate that long-term support comments made by each project will link back to this RFC to help people understand the context by which it's given. So there was conversation and there was an objection, but I believe it's been answered. Stephen and I both provided feedback to Timo on that. Stevens is here. Are there any objections to merging 799 long-term support?
Timo responded with a thumbs down to my comment, so.
That might be the only thumbs down I've actually seen as an emoji response.
I think I put one in the other day into one. I was thinking the same thing when I did it, but I don't know if I actually followed through by putting it, but yeah.
I don't think he likes your answer, but I'm curious. This one is a little more controversial. Is there anyone that's opposed? And I really want people to speak up here to this becoming something that's part of Aries.
Remind me, Sam, did you go to any of the Hyperledger guidance on LTS at all? I think you did, right?
I'm searching my brain.
Because one of the things I could do is bring up at the TOC meeting if Hyperledger has an LTS policy and making sure this is well aligned with that.
Well, I credit Fabric in the doc here.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
With the Fabric policy?
Yeah.
Because that was actually pointed to by Hitachi, which is a community member which doesn't often attend to these calls in person, but listens to them often. And so they brought this up as something that would help them to adopt Aries projects, which is kind of what got this whole party started in the first place. So I'm not linking directly to anything officially from Hyperledger, but there definitely is precedent within other Hyperledger projects. So one thing I have not done, and maybe this warrants another release here, is that I'm looking here and I didn't incorporate any of this feedback yet. And so some additional commentary to clear up some of these issues may be worthwhile. So let's not merge this one yet. And then let me go ahead and follow up with one of these to actually make that happen. Okay, so we're not merging 799. 801 is our last one in the last 5 minutes here. This was brought up by Alexander from DSR pertaining to our conversation, I believe, from last week, right? About Pleasac. What this does, if we expand the context here, he's adding an additional unresolved question to the RFC, which I think is appropriate. We didn't come to solid resolution on this, except to acknowledge that the outcome piece had been dropped from DIDCOM v2, was what I remember out of last week's discussion. And so it may not be worth actually implementing this piece of it. Stephen, you had mentioned that it might be worth officially acknowledging that, like, we're going to remove the receipt piece from any expected implementations. And we don't have a PR for that yet, but that still tracks. Is everything that I'm saying accurate there?
Yeah, I think we could be more aggressive about dealing with this one.
Do you want to not merge this? Do you want to not merge this in order to be more aggressive?
I think so. There's also a typo in it. So in capital letters, so you never like that. But yeah, I think we should hold off and do a bit more on this.
Okay, so let's not merge 801 either and follow that one up for some stuff, which is great. That's good. Excellent. And then Stephen in chat, you mentioned for the next week's unqualified DID discussion, maybe add a grid with the set of unqualified DID features and the status of the frameworks. That's a great idea. It would also be great. Technically, that should be kind of at the bottom of the RFC, although something easier to edit may be nice.
Yeah.
And we should, the other thing that can happen there is that projects can self-signal their intention to participate, which lets us know which projects intend to come along with this. Mostly, I'm unaware of any projects that are like going off in a totally different direction, but just projects that aren't being actively maintained in a way that's relevant. And so that would be nice to kind of have the canonical list of that. Tracking an issue might be easier than tracking in the RFC. It might be. Let's for now, let's just drop this, I think, in the wiki as an agenda item, and if that becomes insufficient.
Yeah, I just meant it in the
agenda.
In the agenda, yeah.
Definitely a good idea, and we should do that. Cool. Okay, we merged a pile and then didn't merge two for some updates that need to happen. And that was effective. We should do this more and continue to clean stuff up. As always, if there's an item that you want to bring attention to that is not making it onto agendas or fast enough, please speak up between meetings or during meetings so that we can get the right topics discussed. This is a general effort to try and do what's best for the community, and I don't always get it right. So please speak up if you think that something needs to have some attention on it. And I'm very happy to direct attention anywhere folks would like for the discussions we have. Cool. Anything else that we want to talk about or put on deck for next week? Colton, I think you're probably right. Will you add that as a comment, what you just said, in the RFC or in the PR, so that I don't forget it?
Sure thing.
That would be awesome, and I'll put that in there when I address that. I anticipate that the changes that you suggest would still not make Timo happy, but I think it would move further in the direction of helping that to be more clear. So I'm a fan of that. Cool. Thanks, folks. Hope your week is a great one, and we will see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.
Thanks all.